Delong, Jody, Paulette, Martinez. Okay, thank you. And could staff please let the people outside know that the session has started?
Right in time. Sorry about that. Morning, everyone. So this is about addressing, okay, down to go forward, okay. This is about addressing a problem that exists in current policy where IPv6 space that is issued to people who are using it but not announcing it in the global routing table could be subject to having their space reclaimed. A very common example is people who are using it for internet exchange points. As a general rule, you don't want the internet exchange points addresses announced in the global routing table. There's no reason for people to be sending traffic from remote destinations to addresses on an exchange point other than abuse. So that's one clear situation. There's also the use on private networks or collections of private networks that aren't necessarily directly attached to the internet, or those addresses are not exported to the internet, but they're connected to other systems that are, and so globally unique addresses, global unicast addresses are useful in those circumstances. It's a very, very simple change to the policy. The other thing that we noticed in the process is that the existing policy text refers only to end sites, and there's some conflation of end site with end user organization, and we tried to bring some clarity to that. There are multi-site organizations. They're going to fall into one of three cases generally. They're either going to have internet-connected sites with BGP to their upstreams where they're operating from within a single aggregate of multiple /48s to advertise that to their upstreams, or they may be not connected and they'll have multiple individual 48s advertised from each site. And then there are, of course, a bunch of hybrid possibilities between those two cases. This is the policy changes. It's quite simple. Instead of aiming at providing address space to end sites, we are providing the space actually to end user organizations for them to use to number their end sites. The policy allows end sites of end user organizations to be assigned provider independent addresses. Here, a few more changes, but as you can see, it's mostly about the difference between an end site and an organization that contains one or more end sites. We still require the deployment of the addresses. We just don't require the advertising of it in the global routing table. And then some other text cleanup. I don't think I need to read the slides to you. And then these are some references to similar policies in the other regions. And I believe with that, we should open the floor for discussion.
Thank you for your presentation, Owen. So the floor is now open for discussion. Yes, please go ahead, sir.
Hello, my name is Pankaj, Tanzania Internet Exchange. I believe it's not a real change of policy, it's just an improvement of the text, and I support it. On the first slide, there was something that I don't like, but I think you don't mean it that way. No, next. End sites such as IXPs. IXPs are not end sites. Okay, so I'm in support.
You what?
In support of the proposed policy.
Okay.
Anyone else? Bueller?
It's not really just an editorial change in the sense that if you look at this text and you are an internet exchange, Afrinic should claim the space to you after 12 months. So actually we are correcting a real problem that it was not discovered before, right?
Yes, you're right.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I think I have. Oh, my name is Abdul Yamta from Federal University, Dutse in Nigeria. My name is it clear now? Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Abdul Yamta from Federal University, Dutse in Nigeria. I have two questions and possibly concerns. How long does it take for Afrinic to decide is long enough if you don't broadcast your IPv6 on a global routing table? And secondly, where I'm from, there's this gap between it's easier to get the block and implementing it is another thing. I believe Afrinic should investigate first and probably see why the organization with the block is not broadcasting it and possibly help before deciding to revoke. Thank you.
All right, thanks. I'll answer that. So the answer to your the first part of your question, how long, you set it. It's what the policy says. If the policy tells us 3 months, then it's 3 months. If it says 2 years, then it's 2 years. In this particular case, the policy says 12 months. So 12 months is what we take. Okay. 2, yes, we are not really that unreasonable if during implementation the policy says 12 months and within 12 months you've not implemented or announced, and we come to you and with all these emails that say, hey, you're in breach of the policy and blah blah blah, normally that email will be like, what's going on? Are you having any challenges? Of course, if you're having some challenges, we'll listen to them. And if you plan to say announce within the next 2 to 3 months, I don't think we can take the space back. So it all depends on how the discussion goes. Yes. If, for example, we contact you and we don't hear back from you, as an example, then chances are we'll take it back. You see. All right, thanks.
Anyone else?
Something to point out is that what Ernest just said is not being changed by this policy proposal. We are keeping that, but we are giving one more opportunity in the sense that those organizations like IXPs and other cases that don't need to announce the space can keep it. Okay, so we are not changing that. We are not changing the actual 12 months that is already in the existing policy.
Yeah, it just needs to be deployed and not necessarily announced. That's the change here.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Haruna Umar Adoga again from Nigeria.
Excuse me, sir.
Haruna.
One second. Please, I'd like people who are introducing themselves to introduce name, organization or affiliation, and the country. Okay. Just so that it's clear to us.
Okay. Haruna Umar Adoga is my name. From Department of Computer Science in Federal University, Lifestyle in Nigeria. I just have one question. I have been following this proposal in the discussion mailing list, and looking at section 6.8.4, it says rectifying the size of an initial assignment. Just one question with regards to that. You said here an organization may submit a new addressing plan to Afrinic if the plan initially submitted to justify the initial assignment no longer satisfies their current needs. So the question is, if they are submitting a new request to Afrinic, will that organization be subjected to some kind of review? What I mean by some kind of review, like will you say, okay, let's see the first assignment we've given you, what have you done with it? Did you repurpose it, or did you sell it out or submit? Do you have to carry out a review before you approve this kind of request?
So on what kind of review they carry out, I'll defer to staff, but I will note that the only change to that text in our proposal is changing it from an end site may to an end user organization may. The purpose of that particular clause in the policy is for organizations that made an addressing plan for V6 before they really understood V6 and they did it with V4 Think and started counting, hosts and narrowing subnets down below /64. And they said, okay, I can fit 300 buildings in a single /48. And then they realized, well, if I'm deploying V6 rationally, each of those 300 buildings needs a /48. They can come back to Afrinic and say, oops, here's the original block, and we need actually this much bigger block. Can you please accommodate us? That's the intent of this particular section of policy. That's how it's been used to the best of my knowledge so far. And again, the only thing changing here from existing policy is the fact that addresses are issued not to end sites themselves, but to organizations that have end sites. So I hope that clarifies. If Ernest wishes to comment on that level of review or whatever is conducted when somebody exercises this section, I'll defer to him.
So I think I would like that.
Madhvi is going to answer that.
Okay.
Madhvi from Member Services. So the way this policy is being implemented is exactly what Owen was trying to explain. If we have an organization that requested for the minimum block at that time, and where they're wanting to deploy IPv6 now, and this is where they'll give us their IP addressing plan, etc., to show that they actually need a larger prefix. So we'll be looking at that. Now, the policy also allows for the prefix to be taken back after 12 months, right?
Okay.
So if we do a review initially, it may come up that the organization could not deploy IPv6 with that first allocation or with the first assignment that they had. Okay, so they'll be given the opportunity to justify for a bigger block, and then the policy will take over with us allowing or registering or giving that member their assignments, and also in monitoring whether it's being announced or not.
Okay. Thank you, Madhvi.
Yeah.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Owen, for the presentation.
No problem.
You may take a seat. Okay, so reviewing discussions on this policy proposal so far and the response to the staff assessments, which has been reflected in this, the decision of the co-chairs is to send this policy proposal to the mailing list for a last call period. Thank you. So next policy proposal we have on our dockets, again, it's Jordi, and this is clarification on, sorry, jumping ahead, provisions for resource hijacking. Oh, sorry, I skipped past lunch. Abuse contact policy update.
Okay. This policy proposal was already presented in the previous meeting for the first time, if I recall correctly. Basically, the point of this policy proposal is that today we have the IRT contact that is not mandatory. What that means is that basically nobody's implementing it. I recall from the stats that were mentioned by the previous impact analysis that it was something like 2 or 3 people only using it. It's a set of recommendations, but because it's not really an actually mandatory policy, is not being used. So that means that as a result, if you have an abuse, you are most of the time unable to find a specific abuse contact, right? So the idea of the policy is to make it mandatory, nothing else than that, and to make sure that the abuse contact is correct. So it's really responding in case of an abuse report, right? So there is a validation process. I think this is what I said. There were some questions from the previous version. One of them was about, I was suggesting in the previous version of the policy that if somebody is not passing the validation, they should get blocked my Afrinic, so they could not access to certain resources, only could access to revalidate the contact once updated, right? I have removed all that because there was concern that legally it not be done, it may affect voting, etc., etc. Even if the lawyer said that according to the Mauritius law is possible to do that, I decided not to go that deep. So I leave at the discretion of the staff to decide what to do if there is not a validation, in the sense of what resources they want to block if they want to block something. Okay, but for sure they need to be able to escalate the first validation failure to other contacts to seek for a correction. I think this is a good way to have other parts of the policy manual as well as this one to say what happens if somebody is not following policies. So we take that from every specific policy and we go for a general way to decide what is to be done if somebody is not complying with policies. I am not going to read all the slides. This is what I just commented. It's a quite big, long policy, so I just go to pass over the slides. Unfortunately, I didn't got too many inputs from the list. I am also suggesting escalation process, so if somebody is not getting the validation contact responding, they can say, hey, Afrinic, is this contact valid? Can you recheck, etc. And of course, this is an automated process. So most of the time, the validation should be totally automated from the Afrinic side. I put also an example of the procedure that Afrinic can follow, but this is again something that they need to implement operationally, and it's their own decision. It's just a suggestion. It's not part of the policy text. And just to finish, exactly the same text has been adopted in APNIC. In 18, there is an equivalent policy proposal that I have checked with the staff, and the actual implementation is exactly the same I am asking here. And the policy is being discussed also anyway in 18 to try to improve the existing text, and in LACNIC and RIPE. In RIPE, we have a validation process which is also automated, but it has a small failure from my side, from my perspective, is that if I use in my abuse contact email from somebody else, it will pass the validation unless there is a real abuse case, then you will realize that it's fake, right? So I don't like that, and I think it's necessary to correct that. So I also submitted the same policy proposal to RIPE for modify that failure in the existing policy. And I think that's it, exactly. Comments, questions?
Okay, floor is now open for questions,
Yes.
comments, contributions. Please approach the microphone if you have any contributions. Okay, before that, we would hear from staff.
So, Jody, this version was submitted quite close to the AG, to this event, so we did not actually get time to assess it. We see that you responded to some of the issues raised in the second version, but apart from one, which we have consistently raised, and that is that we have the IRT, which we have always told you about, which is currently optional, and that the IRT actually can hold more information other than an abuse in email, which you refer to as an abuse mailbox in your proposal. And our view was that it would be easier if we could just get that IRT and convert it from optional to mandatory.
This has been clarified in this version. I also explained it in the mailing list. Basically, what happens is that I am not saying to remove the IRT or any of the other objects. I am saying that the mandatory part is at least the abuse C, which is an abuse email. Okay, that's the mandatory part. The other are optional still. And you don't need to remove the IRT. You just make an alias for the abuse C. This is the same way it has been implemented or is being implemented in IPNIC actually. Exactly the same way. So you don't need to change the IRT that you have today. You just need to make an alias to the abuse C email. That's it. And make it mandatory. So nobody needs to enter two emails, one IRT, one abuse C. It's an alias. It's a pointer to the existing IRT and now is mandatory.
So why can't we just make the IRT mandatory?
Because in most of the regions, people look for abuse instead of IRT. IRT is a nomenclature that it was used only for Afrinic and Apinic, but not in the other regions. So it's just to make sure that everybody is able to use abuse despite which region is looking for. Okay, but it's not actually an operational implication in the sense that you are not removing IRT. You can keep it, but you just have an alias to the email.
Okay, next comment.
It's me. Okay. From the Foundation. Just a couple of comments for this abuse. First, I'm not opposing have a valid and regular updated abuse contact emails, which is necessary. But first point I want to point out is it should be an automated process. So Ethnic should develop a program to check if all the organizations have abuse contact information, if that email is reachable. But we stop there. We don't tell people how to handle their abuse because every country has different laws and everything. But Ethnic, as a registry, we should make sure that everybody has abuse contact information and it's valid, it's up to date. And the second part is, I don't think we should impose any sort of punishment to the members per se. But one idea I come up with is, if members refuse to put an anti-abuse contact information there, we can just put their finance contact, whatever contact they have, into that abuse C there, because, well, if that organization must be reachable with Ethnic in order to pay that member fees, right, in the first place. And if they're not willing to be contacted specifically by abuse, then we just put their general information there. We'll tell them that, we give them 6 months or X amount of time that, hey guys, if you're not complying with the policy, if you're not updating abuse with a specific email address which is reachable, we're going to put your admin contact there because somebody needs to reach you for this resource and administration. That's part of the obligation. But I also agree with the legal advisor pointed out earlier that reject people from voting and those kind of stuff is number one, irrelevant, number two, disproportionate to just a simple admin contact. That's really my comments. Thank you very much.
So just to clarify what you commented, what points have been taken in consideration in this version. Okay, so the validation that we are doing is just the contact is reachable and from that organization, not from someone else. Okay? And the other point is I removed any kind of action is up to the rest of the policy manual or the staff or the bylaws or the RSA to take actions, if any.
I think we should be specify on the action. That's what I'm saying, that we need to make sure everybody has information there, and we should tell them that if they don't have, if they're not willing to put the actual abuse email there, then they just put we would just going to put the admin email there.
But you don't think that this is something that it should be for all the policy manuals? So if you don't follow policies, you need to have some way to react from the Afrinic perspective? No, I think it should be generic.
Yeah, but I think we should be clear in that part of Ghana because this is not let's say severe violation of a policy or anything, but it's one little thing and we make sure everybody does it. I support that. Right. But I think we should be more clear on how Afrinic does it, and I think Afrinic would also appreciate more clear guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for Lou. Lou, can you stay?
There is a comment from legal staff, I think.
No, wait, okay. I should go first.
Now it's my normal height. Thank you. Now, my first remark is about this slide. Is the reference there an argument for accepting the proposal? Or is it only something put there for us to know?
It's just information. The references information, the reference section in all the policy proposals is to have pointers to similar activities in other regions or other information. It's not something to anyone decide against or in favor of a proposal.
I understand this. I understand this. I thought, let me ask the question because you're lingering there. So I thought it was a matter of substance. It is not. Now, my point is about the abuse contract. You know that the authorities right now put an obligation on all members of union or new members coming in to provide all information about themselves which goes into the database. So if they don't do it, of course it is something which blocks the system, it doesn't work well. But as I said earlier, there is already a built sort of sanction in there right now. And whenever there is somebody who is complying with a certain number of time, it is always possible to record at the end of the day as a sanction. But preventing, because then
okay, yeah, the question I have for Lou is, Lou, how, why would the member refuse to put an abuse contact?
I don't know.
But you said it, that if the member does not want, then we should use the finance there. But why? So why would a member refuse to put contact information?
Alan, if I can answer that, some people that is using resources for doing, let's say, bad activities, of course, they don't want to be contacted. So they don't want to have an abuse contact.
Do you accept that answer?
People don't want to abuse email for various reasons. That's many reasons. For example, you can be, it's not just people doing bad things, it can be a corporate bureaucratic, like you have large telecoms and you suddenly need to create a new contact information in your resource management, then you don't bother. You know, there's many things in the factors that why members not cooperate. It's not necessarily with better intentions.
Yeah, sometimes it's not a bad intention. Sometimes it's the employee that was in that position went out of the company and they forget to update it. That's the reason for having a validation. So they remember that they need to update it.
Or the boss of the telecom don't give a shit about the policy. That's definitely possible.
Okay. I have 2 points. This is Alain for the record. Alain for the record. I have 2 points. First is to follow. You can go. The first one is to follow up on Ashok said. And the question for you, Jordi, why do we need this policy? Because the RSA already give the mandate, the power, the staff to do.
But there is not automated validation in the RSA. And I think automated validations are good to have because that avoids having additional ways to review resources, which cost more money. So whatever it can do automated is good for all. Because you pay once for developing the software and it's done, and it's done automatically. I think that's the correct way to review resources, automate it.
Yeah, but it cannot be fully automated, as you know, that at some point if you have to look
automate as much as possible, of course, yes.
Then to maybe one side, the thing is, we should not be talking about punishment, okay? Because if we start going there, so if you are a member, you are supposed to provide some data and make sure data are accurate. So if you fail to do that, we should find a way to convince you to do that. For example, those who want to use their right to vote, that means that at least they have the admin contact valid. If you don't have the admin contact valid, you will not be able to vote.
Right.
So if the admin contact can come and vote, then we have someone to talk to and maybe find out why they are not willing to put abuse contact. Okay.
But that's part of the proposal. The proposal states that if the abuse contact fails, it will be escalated to the other contacts like the admin contact. So that's the way, exactly.
1 second, Alain. Alain, you had a couple of questions. Any recommendations?
Let me. Okay. So first one, I'm not yet convinced that we need this policy because we have the RSA.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
If I can respond to that quickly.
Okay, respond then.
The RSA is not providing an automated and periodic way of validation. So the RSA is fine, is perfect, and this is the same I am saying for the review policy, but what we need to do is to make it automated, or as much as we can.
Okay, got you. I think Alan wants to provide some clarification, then we'll go to Prof.
Thank you. This is Alan Barrett from AppNet. Is my microphone on? Okay.
Yeah.
When I read a draft of this proposal, I found it very confusing. I didn't know whether it was trying to make abuse C mandatory, or whether to make IRT mandatory, or whether to rename some objects in the database. I found it very confusing. So I would love to have that clarified. And earlier, Jordi, you said something about making an alias. I don't think we have a mechanism for that in the database software. So also, I don't really understand how you think it would work. Now, I think it's a valid use of the policy process to specify that failure to provide a working abuse contact would be a policy violation. I think that's something that's within the realm of the policy process. But specifying the spelling of the fields that we use in the database, I would prefer it if you leave that to the technical people who implement the database.
I think the way the policy is written allows you to do the implementation as is easier for you. I say this because I worked with other registries for looking for the correct text to avoid that kind of inconsistency. So I don't think you have a software that is too much different to what is working in other regions. I think it will work. In fact, what I have tried is to address in this version the previous impact analysis to resolve those issues. So I am not sure if you are referring to the last version or the previous one.
I'm not sure either.
Yeah.
My memory is from the previous one.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that was changed. But it did seem to me that the proposal was specifying the names of the fields, and I thought that was taking kind of out of scope. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Alan, for your comments. Yes, sir.
I think some of us are having difficulty with this even being called a proposal, because it seems like a suggestion of an improved administrative process, okay, to automate something that is already clearly defined in the RSA. So it coming here as a policy, telling us how to do the administration is awkward. And that is, in my opinion, why we are having some challenges with this. Because we would rather just leave it to the CEO and the staff to figure out how they are able to, improve the automation of the system than to bring the administrative issue into the policy realm. And therefore, I have challenges with it. Thank you.
Just to respond to that, can I ask maybe Ernest or Magdi, are you actually doing any validation of the IRT?
Please, it's not, please, I'm still here. I don't think it's about that.
Well, I think that's your question. Your question is that I am stating something that is already in the RSA.
I did not say.
And that is not a policy, it's a procedure. It's not. It's a policy to say the contact that must be validated periodically. That's what the policy's proposal is doing.
RSA says the contacts must be there. Okay? You are asking that it's automated.
No, what I am asking is, because the RSA says the contact must be there.
Yes. So you want to make the policy to tell us how to do our work?
The contact should be validated. That's what I am saying.
Well, if it's in the RSA, it has to be validated.
The RSA don't say it should be validated.
No. I don't know what issue you are trying to address. RSA says that you must make it valid and correct there. Okay? All the time. Okay? So, if it is a suggestion to them as to an administrative automated process to help them be even more 99.99% accurate, I think that's okay. But to make it a policy seems to me like we are gaming the policy system, and I feel uncomfortable.
There is question for the staff. There is a specific procedure besides the PDP to suggest the staff ways to do things and to make that will allow us to make the IRT mandatory, or it should be PDP?
Okay, I'll attempt to answer that. The RSA, I think, according to what Ashok says, specifies that contact information must be kept accurate. So I guess that implies that staff can actually go ahead to ensure the correctness of that by either automating the checking mandatory or otherwise. So I guess that's what it implies. Now, about making it mandatory, the IRT mandatory, the current policy in place now is explicit about the
guidelines.
About the IRT itself, and it states that it's mandatory.
So we need a policy.
You remember that in the RSA, there is some information that members are required to provide in the RSA in particular. And it's silent about whether that information must include abuse contact information. Okay?
Exactly.
The RSA, you can provide technical contacts, you can provide administrative contacts, and other types of contacts, but it is silent on whether you must provide abuse contact information. So I guess looking at it from that angle, yes, the policy might guide on whether abuse contact information should be part of what should be provided in the RSA and whether it should be mandatory or not.
Thank you.
Okay, next in line.
Okay. Yeah, Pascal again here from Nigeria. This is one of the issues that we are having in the community. You know, when you want to propose a proposal for every event or best known practices, I mean, we know they are already best known practices followed by the RSA. They have already emphasized that. So I don't think it will be necessary for us to be developing proposals for every problem we have. Okay. Then the next thing I'm talking about is regarding the escalation time. You were saying that as the number of probably issues decrease, so the escalation time will increase. Is that what you are saying? So what I am saying is that it is possible that it might go the other way around, and it will imply that bans will actually happen faster on the community. So I'm not comfortable with that actually, because normally some people will definitely not respond. I mean, if you visit a website and you try to contact them sometimes, some websites, there is some affinity to miss out on a contact information. You understand? So I think definitely this proposal will actually go and result to a lot of bans on a lot of people. And I'm not comfortable with it, Jody.
Just a point to what you said.
Okay.
What I have done in the policy, and that was already in the second version, I believe,
okay,
is I said that the escalation is, the time is 15 days for the first validation. If it fails, then additional 15 days for escalation.
Okay.
But that should be done twice a year. But in any case, I mentioned explicitly that at the discretion of the staff, this can be changed at any time. So if the quality increase, the staff may believe that instead of 2 validations per year, 1 is enough, or 1 every 2 years, or whatever. So I am not stating in the text that this should be harder and harder. It's just a way to say, when it improves, you decide what to do and you tell the community. That's it.
Yeah, but I also think you are overriding the RSA, actually. Okay. I'm not comfortable with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please.
Thank you. I would like to speak in French, if you allow me. Je m'appelle Maïmouna Diop, je suis du Sénégal.
I'm Maimouna. I'm from Senegal. I would like to thank the presenter for the proposal. I am belonging to the Francophone. That's why I can't understand why we have to define a policy and know how the staff there is a rule that okay, the data must be updated. Even if it is not mandatory, they can also request. Do we need to come here to spend 2 hours to discuss about, the definition of policies? I think you have to come back to the basic. What is a policy? And it should be global. It should be also very flexible so we can implement it. If we have to go to all the detail and the proposal, I don't know what the PDP is going to be. I think we have to face the definition of the policy and also the implementation. That is the responsibility of the staff. According to me, you are telling now the staff this is the way you have to work. In my country, it is not acceptable. Thank you.
Je voudrais aussi proposer à ce qu'on arrête le...
Like also to propose so we can also to stop, otherwise we will spend the whole day here.
Thank you, Maimuna. Just to make it clear, we're having this drawn-out discussion because we've saved some time on previous policy proposals, and we don't want to shift the order of presentation of policy proposals because of those who are following remotely and have planned to attend specific sessions based on the time and the agenda. We will take comments from Madhvi before we go ahead with the next contributor.
Okay, Madhvi from Member Services. So I have some information and some statistics about the IRT. All right. So up to now, we have only 23 organizations that adopted the IRT. And for these organizations, when you query the WHOIS database for their resources, the first response, the first line of response that comes back is the abuse contact. Okay. But unfortunately, there's only 23 out of our 1,600 members that adopted this because that policy for abuse that is ratified in our region at the moment is optional. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for information.
Okay, center mic.
I am Eukaria from SDG Nigeria. I am not in support of this policy. Reason being that, just as they've said, it's already in existence in the RSA. And secondly, I need to remind us all that AfriNIC is a regional internet registry, not a police that goes after people. So we should focus on how to achieve the mission of AfriNIC. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Good morning once again, everybody. My name is Bello Temitakwa Juliana from Nexen Bank. I would like to agree with what my colleague has said, Mr. Pascal and Mr. Eukaria. AfriNIC, it's here to maintain databases of registry and not witchcrafting people with a single problem whereby there's an issue, you begin to bring up policies for this, for that. I don't think that is relevant. And I would like to say AfriNIC should try and endeavor to maintain a stable community to encourage every members to improve in businesses and not bringing up policies for each issues. Then I would like to close this by saying I do not agree with this policy. Thank you.
My name is Gregoire Eumi from Benin. I just want to remind us about the RSA, not the RSA, because in the next session, we will talk about the review policy. And in the mailing list, a lot of people are saying, this is in the RSA, this is not in the RSA. So the same people that say, for example, they think that this policy is trying to fix is already in the RSA. But if we go back to the review, we will see the same people are saying no. So we need to be constant in our argument. And also for some people that attend one session and don't attend the other sessions, then maybe we don't have the same idea for all the policy. So AFRENIC is not a policy, but AFRENIC should do policy, a policy meant for some resources. Thank you.
To answer that, just repeating what Madbi said, the problem is that in this specific case, the RSA is not mandating an abuse contact, is mandating other contacts, and the numbers say it. There are only 63, I think it was the number of members with this contact. So we really need this.
Okay, thank you. Microphone queues are now closed, but go ahead.
Merci. Arnaud Melina.
Arnaud Melina, I believe that you have understood very well what the advocate of AFRENIC came now to request. It is clearly specified that in the RSA we have also to accommodate this abuse contact. It is already in inside. So you are asking the automation. So what he said, when a newcomer, maybe a new member want also to register, he's supposed to give all the information. So this is mandatory when the abuse contact. So you're asking us now to change how we become member. I think each structure has the freedom to use what kind of tool they want to use. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I want to repeat that. This contact is not mandatory. That's the reason we have only 63 of them.
Okay, go ahead.
Komi from AFNOG in Togo. Georgie, I'm not in support or oppose your proposal. I just have a comment. I think here the issue is we are trying to deal with non-compliance with AFRENIC RSA, and I'm concerned about the thought that automation is the way to go because with the rise of artificial intelligence, you may open door for loopholes, and we finish with some members trying to also automate reply to the abusive contact. So think about it.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you, Jordi, for making the presentation. Well, it looks like you have earned yourselves an early lunch. The decision of the co-chairs regarding this is to send the policy proposal back to the mailing list for further discussion. There's no rough consensus to proceed with this. So you can stretch your legs, get to the lunch venue early so that you can be back here 2 on the dot, or what's that? 2 o'clock sharp, we will resume. So it would be nice if you can be back here 10 minutes to 2. Thank you all.
Wishing you all a beautiful lunch, but quick announcement. So as I mentioned earlier, the members that wish to vote, well, to attend tomorrow's annual general members meeting and vote within that meeting, and vote not online, but using the paper ballots, you need to go to the member services help desk, which is right outside, to register yourself. Staff can verify you. If you have any proxies, let them know of that so that they can be verified, so that later you can be handed over the instruments, the paper ballots that will require you to vote in whatever you need to be, whatever will be voted for.